So what's up, everybody? Whether you're just joining us or whether you're just watching the replay, welcome to Unraveled Sessions Live. My guest, Word Traffiker, brother, it's good to see you. It's good to have you on here. I've been wanting to get you on for a hot minute, so I'm glad you and I started talking again, and you got back on here for a little bit, and we're doing this live, so I'm definitely excited for that as well. So how are you? How's your day been?
It's been a long day, but I'm getting through it. Every day seems to be long these days, but it's part of it. Part of owning your own business.
Oh yeah. Definitely, yeah. These days are stupid long. It seems like ever since the daylight saving time, I feel like the day's going slower, in my opinion. I don't know if that's what it is with everybody, but for me, that's what it feels like.
I like having more sun, so it makes the day feel longer, but at the same time, it's a better, like, you don't feel like the day ends too early, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when
Yeah,
I
yeah.
lived up in Providence for a while, I was up there, and it would get dark at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It'd be dark.
Oh, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was
I don't know how
insane.
they do it in, I don't know how they do it in Alaska, because right, I think it's like 6 months they'll have straight up daylight for 24 hours, and then all of a sudden it's nighttime for 24 hours, which is so weird. I don't know how they do it up there.
Yeah, that would drive me insane. I would have worse insomnia than I do already. So,
Yeah, for real, for real. So, brother, like I said, thank you so much for coming in here. Welcome, welcome. So let's start with the first question I always ask everybody. So as far as writing, poetry, and creating and all that stuff, how did all that start for you?
so I actually did some of that when I was younger, and I went away from it because as I got older, I was in a world of like finance, right, and computers and everything was very analytical, and everybody I knew was very analytical, and the places I grew up were not welcoming to empathy and all that kind of stuff. So as I got older and then went through divorce and a couple other things, I picked up and started writing again. And it came out like a flood because it had been pent up for so long. And it was like all topics. It was, everything that I'd not said to everybody, all those different things were coming out. And so when I started with poetry because it was easiest, because you can just like, you can start it and stop it, right? You can say this one's done and just be done, right? But then when I started getting into the novel, that's a lot harder because it takes a long time and you don't get to share that with people. You have to go for a very long period of time before you get to share that work, and that's really rough to do. But really, it all started up again where just dealing with things that I needed to deal with. Putting it down on paper helped me deal with it.
Wow. So talk to me about like that release. Okay, it's on the paper, bang. Like talk to me about the release. How does the like what's going through your mind while you're putting all these things into paper? And talk to me about how does it feel once all of that is released onto paper? Like walk me through all of that. Like, how does that all look for you?
So at first, I just needed I needed to talk to somebody, right? And so the paper was there for me to talk to. And so I just started going, and I get into a trance almost and just be writing and just not even realize how much time had passed. And I remember one night in particular, I was out at Lake Travis, and I used to live out there on the lake. And when I was looking out over the water, there was a red bolt of lightning that I saw. I've never seen anything like that before. It was like a red bolt of lightning. And I sat down and I just started writing about that. And it took me down this whole path of things I didn't even know I hadn't dealt with yet. So that's kind of where it all, like the floodgates, that was the night that the floodgates really opened up for me. And
Mm,
so as I went through poem by poem, I started writing like one was about, I wrote about love, and it's really jaded, right? Because at the time that's what I was dealing with. And then I've written others about, just concepts and ideas that are really important to me. So it's transitioned from a thing that I was dealing with stuff to more of a, I don't want to call it a concept, but something that I'm moving forward with, like trying to I guess pass along an idea is the best way to put it.
Mm, okay. And it's interesting, right? Because you said that you saw a red bolt of lightning you never seen before, and then just that itself became this thing. So, talk to me about the actual feeling, like once it was on that paper, like what was going through your mind after it was on that paper? Like, was it like the sign of relief? How did that relief look like? How did it feel like? What did that all look like for you?
Well, I never opened up to anybody about any of this stuff before, so to just have it out there in the world and say that it was real was a big accomplishment for me, right? And it took me a while to reconcile with what I wrote because I was like, man, I didn't realize I had these issues, right? And from my background, the people that needed therapy were weak, right? So that's what I'd always heard, and so I'm like, some of this stuff is pretty messed up. So as I was going through that, the release it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders, but at the same time, it's like I really enjoy this, and I always really enjoyed this. Why haven't I been doing this? What's the other side of it?
Mm,
And
okay.
then as I shared that with people, so I didn't share it for a long time. It was about 2, 3 years before I shared any of it. And then I had a friend who's a musician, and he's in the group that I helped start called the North Cafe.
Okay.
And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But we started this. There's a room in what's that app where you could just talk and not Clubhouse. So we started a room in Clubhouse where people could come and work on their art. Right? If you had something you'd written, you could read it out loud. People would give you feedback. If you had new music you wanted to share, you could come in and play it, and people would give you like honest feedback about how you were doing. And that all started up during the pandemic, and that's where I found like some community to be able to get me through that period during the pandemic because that was really rough for me.
Mm, okay.
I was dealing with being isolated pretty much because the only person that could come over to my house was my daughter. That's a hard thing to deal with, when you can't go anywhere and you don't get to see anybody. So as I went through that, the Clubhouse group helped me get through a lot of things, and then from there, we started it was going to be a short story that I wrote, and that's what's actually turned into the book.
Okay.
But it was going to be a short story to go with some music that they were writing, and we released the first part of it, and then we're just like, no, this isn't going to work because my story is too long. I can't tell it in a condensed format like this. And then they didn't want to write just depressing music, so to speak, because it was all serious topics that I was writing about. So we still have the North Cafe, but it's very different than what we started out with.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, because you were talking about the weight lifted off her shoulder, and you were mentioning about feedback at the cafe and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask you about, because you said you had no one to talk to, so the paper was that thing that you had to talk to. In your opinion, in your eyes, of course, do like how do you feel, or what do you think is the difference between expressing all that on a paper and opposed to expressing all that to a person?
So the biggest thing is the paper doesn't give you any like response, right? You don't get any feedback from the paper. But the good thing is you can write anything you want on that paper and not be judged. So
Mm,
the paper is a good starting point. And it takes me, I have to do a lot of iterations to really get my poem the way I want it, to really connect with the message that I want it to send. So the paper, I spend a lot of time in the paper world still, even with everything I write now. It's all mostly on paper because, I guess I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to writing. So I have to have it, exactly with the right tone and the right words and everything. And so the paper is where I can, play and explore things and do things like that. But when you give it to a person, you're going to get feedback. Whether, even if they don't say anything, you can see how they respond, right? So that's when I had to learn about vulnerability, because that was a big thing that I wasn't used to sharing, was me being vulnerable, right? So as I started sharing my poems, vulnerability was a big thing that I was still learning how to wear vulnerability well, I guess is the best way to put it.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And it's interesting too, especially like us men. It's not easy for us to be vulnerable like that, especially during like you did bring up 2020, and I think 2020 for everybody, especially myself, it was a very weird time. I guess I'm gonna say because it's like we didn't know what was happening. I know I was used to certain things, even in the Instagram realm, poetry community aspect of it. But it seemed like because I believe the shutdown was on the 18th of March. March 20th was when all of a sudden I feel like Instagram all of a sudden I got all these notifications and everybody was going live because there was nothing else to do. But it was so interesting. I feel like for me, there was like some kind of renaissance that was happening around that time because, like you said, everybody was isolated, everybody was to themselves, everybody was in their homes, and they really couldn't do much. Everything was shut down. So you said that's when you. So I just want to make sure I understand this. So you said that's when you found the poetry community on Instagram. It was during the pandemic time.
Yeah, so I never went on live Instagram or did anything like that before the pandemic started, because it just wasn't a thing that I did. If I wanted to go talk to people or something, I'd go out and I could go do that. That was easy to do. So I never got on lives or went to any of these clubhouse rooms or anything until the pandemic started. And that's when I'd never embraced an online community before, which was a weird thing for me. So that was part of it. And then also you mentioned it was like the 18th of March. So my daughter and I were supposed to go. We had a flight booked on the 17th to go to Paris and London,
Mm.
and we didn't get to make that trip. So that was just heartbreaking being at home with her, because she's like, let's play like we're on a flight, because she'd never flown anywhere, right? So to be sitting at home and not being able to go anywhere, and her talking about, let's act like we're flying, on a plane and all this stuff. And that crushed me, to be honest.
Oh wow. Okay. I know, but what was it about it? Because I would assume it's because the fact that even though we were pretending and you try to make the best of it, it's like damn. But like I was really looking forward to this trip. This is my first time experience, especially with my daughter, right? Like with your own child. Like you always want to have bonding with your child. You always want to have like stuff that you can remember, like little memories and stuff like that. And it seemed like that pandemic stopped that in a way where it was like, oh man, I wasn't able to share that particular memory as far as with your child and trying to try to build that relationship with her and stuff like that. So that I could understand it from that point of view. So as far as the vulnerability aspect of it, right? I wanted to ask, like, because it's true what you said, because even with me too, like I didn't know this world existed, right? I didn't know this was. I came into this community 2018, but as far as the lives, and I didn't know this existed, honestly. I think it was Poets Anonymous, I think is what it was. They were the first people to read me. And it was interesting because from there, you know how sometimes it's like connecting the dots and stuff. So that's how I did. And it seems like I look back years later now, 2024, it's like, oh snap, come up such a long way. So when you came into the poetry community on Instagram, so what was your experience with that as far as the embracing of the online community? I mean, I would assume in the embracing part there was also some fears. I'm gonna assume as well. I mean, because I know there was some fears for me personally because you always hear the nightmares of like catfishing and stuff like that and all these scams that was happening too. So that's what I'm saying. Like in your eyes, in your experience, like how did that look like for you?
So I had a really good story from when I first came on. So the first person that ever read my work was Krippenschenker and
Okay.
Ridley and Shrift. So they were on a live and they shared some of my work, and I was like, oh, I mean, somebody else shared it. It wasn't me, reading it. So that was really cool. And then, so I went into another live like 2 nights later. Nobody that I knew was on there, but they're sitting there reading some really good poetry. And I request to go up. And do you know the only Athera?
Uh, it sounds familiar. Sounds familiar. If I see the face, maybe because there's so many people I got introduced to during the pandemic time on that. So that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so we're really good friends now, but at the time she didn't know who I was. So she says my requests come in, and she starts looking at my name, and I've got a lot of accounts out there because I'm a business. I work in the digital world, right? So I've got business accounts, and I'm associated with like 50 some odd other accounts and all this stuff, right?
Right.
So she comes on, and she's like, "This guy's a scammer," like, and she starts showing my picture up on the live, and I'm like, "Okay, hold up, slow your roll, because this is my business that we're talking about here." So I messaged her, and we, got everything under control. And then she let me come up because she knew some of the people that I knew, and they vouched for me. But at the very beginning, that was kind of rough. That whole the first couple of times, I didn't know if I was going to be able to get on. And then when I did get the chance to go on, sometimes they thought I was a scammer. So
Mm, okay. That which is understandable because around that time that was happening a lot as well. So I could understand that from that perspective. But that's good that you were able to get that under control, and then to finally settle that, and you were able to go live and stuff like that. So talk to me about your first live. Like once you were on that screen and reading your piece, like how did that feel for you, and how did it make you feel after you read the piece?
so the first time I read, the first pieces I read were about, they were more positive, right? They were, well, about as positive as I get, I'll say. That's a better way to put it, right? So it was about hopes and dreams and all that kind of stuff, which is very, important. But so those all went really well because people were inspired, and I got to take some of that energy from them, right? So they gave me some energy, and I got to receive that energy, which was a big thing since we weren't interacting with people face to face. So from there, I started reading stuff that was darker and more pointed, and then that was the main response I got was, "I've been there too," and that's what it really helped, right? To know I wasn't the only one that had felt that way or had experienced something like that. That's where the real help came from for me.
Mm, okay. And would you say that this community, what during that time, would you say that during that whole entire time era, that has helped you as well, not just emotionally or mentally, but did it also help you like creatively as well? If so, like how did that look like for you? Because I know for me, I feel like I got inspired a lot, right? I feel like during that time, I feel as if that time period, I feel like it expanded my mind a little bit, because during that time, I guess before that actually, I was very uh, how do I explain? Like, because I grew up to be on the hush hush. Like, I grew up in a way like I wasn't really supposed to talk about stuff like that, so I was always embarrassed to talk about mental health, and I saw everybody was talking about mental health, and I remember I went on a live and I had pretty much talked about my mental health for the first time, and everybody just embraced me, and I feel like it expanded my mind to help me understand myself more, but I feel like it also get inspired more, where when I started writing it started to access parts of my mind that I never knew I could access for me to write the way I write today. So I wanted to ask, did it did it work out like that for you too, when you during that time?
Yeah. So as far as being able to help people, that was something I didn't know that I could do because I didn't know I had that vulnerability or the depth to give that compassion, right?
Right.
'Cause I've never had to do it before. It was just like, here's the problem, you go solve the problem, right? That's all I knew. And so it did expand my mind in that way. But what was interesting about it for me was, I guess, I did get inspired by people in the rooms and stuff, but actually, I went into a lot of those rooms to try to help people, and then I would picked up a lot of toxic relationships from that
Oh wow.
because
Okay. Yeah,
there's a
that
lot
was
of toxic,
common.
there's a lot of people with toxic personalities there, and so I got a lot of those latched on to me, and I had to shed those before I could really, come out of it, because I'd be feeling better, and then they would come around and start messaging me and stuff like that, and then I'd just be right back down. So I had to. That's when I really learned the lesson about you got to be able to cut people off.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting too because cutting people off, that's something I struggle with actually, for a long, long time actually, because I'm always the kind of person like, hey, let's just embrace each other. But like you said, right? It's like with every good thing, there's always toxicity around, which kind of sucks that it's like that. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is in every aspect. Um, so that's something that I struggle with is shutting people down because a part of me feels like, okay, I know this is not good for me, but then there's the other part like, oh man, see, but I feel bad because I always try to do good, but now I'm painted to be the bad person. But realistically, I realized, no, I'm not bad because I want to set boundaries because at the end of the day, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about mental health. Your mental health matters. And if this is not adding value to my life, then what what's the point? So I think like what you're saying is perfect sense. In these toxicities, you had to do what you had to do and shut it down. Yeah, I mean, one thing, yeah, not everybody has to agree, not everybody has to like it, but it is what it is, right? Because there's just no room for toxicity in this, especially in this life today. Because the way life is today, there's no room for that. I'm sorry, like I don't got time for that. Like it is what it is. Like it's been real peace, you know, and call it a day. But yeah, that was definitely a lot. Yeah, that was a common thing back then, which kind of sucked too, because I feel like we lost a lot of good poets because of that too.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of good poets I used to interact with that are not around anymore because of these things. But I would like to think like you, me, and along with other people I know, I feel like we survived all that. I like to think we did, you know. But yeah, I get that. I get that. I wanted to ask if you had a piece you wanted to read, just to give the audience a taste of how you write.
Yeah. So, and just to kind of follow up on that topic, what was really hard for me was letting those people go, because one of them, was suicidal, and then she calls me up saying, that she was, in a place where, she was going to hurt herself, and so that made it really difficult for me,
Mm,
because I'd never seen anything like that before. So, but let's start with, since we already talked about it, I'll start with the first piece I wrote, which is more my hopeful piece.
okay.
Let me pull it up here. Give me 1 second, because I just got a new computer, so that's been fun.
No, no, congratulations. Yeah, when it comes to a new gadget, especially a new computer, yeah, congratulations. Because like once the old one messes up, it's like, oh damn. Hopefully, I saved everything before it got messed up.
No, so my original computer got one of our clients, his site got hacked, and so then I was trying to fight that, and then I got the virus on my computer. So,
Oh, that sucks.
but now I got a Mac Studio, so I'm happy as hell. It's like works so much better.
Nice.
But none of my links are here, so it takes me a second to open up new things that I haven't touched before. So,
It's all good. It's all good.
all right, let me see here. I had to move some things around in order to accommodate it.
I get that. I get that.
All right, let's see here. Well, I was just planning on reading from the first poetry book, not the second one, not the first one.
Okay, it's all good. Sounds good to me.
All right, let me see if it's here. If it's not, I'll just read something off of this one. All right, I'll find that one after, so we don't waste too much time here. But the one I've been reading recently is Phoenix Rising. There's also, let's see if I've got Revolutionary Mind in here. We could do either of those, whichever one you would like to hear.
You can do both if you like. It's all good to me.
All right, we'll start with Phoenix Rising, and then we'll see if we want to do Revolutionary Mind as well.
Okay.
All right. I'll make sure this is the last copy because I do lots of versions. So, okay, here we go. As the phoenix feathers begin to shudder, there are two certainties. There will be a death and there will be a birth. The shrine doors open, forcing them to come and bear witness. And as they arrive, the brightness blinds them, and the familiarity almost drowns them. They know this place. They had been here before. They watch him enter the truly non-denominational shrine, a shrine built to honor the ideology of choice. The wanderers and travelers know it as the fork in the road, and while its name sounds anemic, the shrine only deals in life-altering fates, as those summoned can attest. As the phoenix feathers begin to flutter, memory crashes upon them like tidal waves. They were brought to this. They were brought again to pay penance. That false sense of self-security came with a price. Choice limited their perspective and left their mind to wander in the darkness, fueled by lack of belief. Darkness haunted by the ghosts of abandoned creations. This was their tax for leaving their gifts in the shrine and letting their phoenix feathers fall. As your phoenix feathers begin to shimmer, the feathers are doused in blood. The blood of their lost ideas, the blood of their failures, the blood of their euthanized spirit. They inundate you with negativity under the guise of love. They do not believe in you. They do not understand true belief. As your phoenix feathers begin to... sorry, I went too far. Sorry. As your phoenix feathers begin to shimmer, the feathers are... I'm going to start over because I just went too far into that one.
No, that's fine.
All right. We'll start it from the top. As the phoenix feathers begin to shudder, there are two certainties. There will be death and there will be a birth. The shrine doors open, forcing them to come and bear witness. As they arrive, the brightness blinds them, and the familiarity almost drowns them. They know this place. They had been here before. They watch him enter the truly non-denominational shrine, a shrine built to honor the ideology of choice. The wanderers and travelers know it as the fork in the road, and while its name sounds anemic, the shrine only deals in life-altering fates, as those summoned can attest. As the phoenix feathers begin to flutter, memory crashes upon them like a tidal wave. They were brought again to pay penance. Their false sense of security came with a price. Choice limited their perspective and left their mind to wander in the darkness. Darkness haunted by the ghost of orphaned creations. This was their tax for leaving their phoenix feathers in the shrine. As your phoenix feathers begin to shimmer, the feathers are doused in blood. The blood of their lost ideas, the blood of their failures, the blood of their euthanized spirit. They inundate you with negativity under the guise of love. They do not believe in you. They do not understand true belief. As your phoenix feathers begin to rise, they scramble and try to gain their grip on reality, anchoring onto your ascent. They begin to ask you questions, but they no longer understand your answers. They try to reason with you, but you seem illogical and incoherent. In a final effort to salvage the logic and reason they have held dear for so long, they try to act as your savior, hoping a moment of reverence will provide their salvation. But baptisms on the Hudson are sacrilegious. As your phoenix feathers begin to emanate, you are harnessing true belief. Your thoughts become magnetic, pulling some people towards you and pushing others away. Change is called to usher in the unknown, and it walks in, knocking status quo to the ground, allowing the unknown to come in like a flood. Believers void of purpose are slain by ego. Believers void of hope are slain by fear. But the energy keeps growing at an exponential rate. As your phoenix feathers disintegrate, emitting the final blinding pulse of light, ground shift, reality is altered. A pure idea has emerged and true believers are reborn. Because the difference between merely existing and belief is the difference between merely existing and truly living. As your phoenix feathers rise from the ashes, the phoenix feathers of the multitudes begin to shudder. And that's that one.
So talk to me about that piece. Because when you think about a phoenix, you always think about how it rises, right? We always think about, okay, this is where I am, but this is where I'm going to be, and it's like a flourishing moment. What was the inspiration behind that piece?
So there was actually a prompt that said, it was about phoenix feathers, right? It was just a prompt, and it got my mind going on that topic. And a lot of the things I've been writing in the book were about this, and I've been writing from my character's persona for so long that I started writing like he writes, right? And so this was something he would write. And a lot of this comes back to the idea of like, there's a lot of people in your life that will try to help you, but they don't want you to grow because they know that growing means leaving, right? So they don't try to discourage you in a way that is directly negative. They say, protect yourself, right? Do things like that because that's what that'll keep you from leaving, hopefully. So this piece was all about growth, to be honest, because something that I struggle with is I like to grow, and the people that I know don't always want to grow around me or with me.
Hmm.
And that's again where I had to learn how to separate myself from people that were holding me back. It's not a fun thing to do. So
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, it's so true, right? Because I was thinking, while you were speaking, I was thinking about the story in the Bible by Abraham and Lot, and how eventually Abraham had to separate himself from Lot because, I mean, there was different reasons that that caused them to separate from each other, but it's the whole cutting ties part. Because sometimes if it's especially if it's people that you think, I don't know, let me phrase that. Especially when it's people that are closest to you. One thing I've learned the hard way is sometimes the people you think should always be around you, or the people that are closest to you, sometimes aren't there for your best interest. And sometimes it's hard, right? Because it's like, especially if it's blood family, because with blood family, it's like, damn, but this is the person I thought, because we're blood, we would support each other no matter what, right? But I've learned the hard way that sometimes family is not always the blood, is sometimes it's what you make it, right? The people who are closest to you, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's like, unfortunately, we do live in a I guess in our own. Everybody has their own space, but I guess like I know for me personally, I've had situations where the people who I thought, they were brothers, people who I thought were my best friends, are the same people who turned their backs on me. But the thing is, right, when we go from one season of our lives to the next, sometimes what happens is there's certain things we can't take with us. Some things we have to kind of leave there. But the transitional period from that season to the next one, to step into the one that life, I call it God, some people call it the universe, has for us. I guess the letting go part is the part that is very hard. It's difficult because it's very uncomfortable. It makes us feel some type of way. And the fact is, it's not an easy thing, because letting go means that I have to humble myself and realize that, I can't keep some of those things. So I would think, like, in the same way, at least that's how your piece spoke to me. And that's what I think about. I know letting go is part of growth, but it hurts, right? I think about when you have a wound on your skin, right? Like, especially if you have stitches, after a while, once, they start taking the stitches out, it's going to hurt a little bit, because like, oh crap, that means now I have to let this thing go. Or this thing has to cannot be a part of you for a long time. Because eventually, there's the transition that's preparing you for the next season of your life. So I definitely get that. I definitely get that.
so the piece that kind of speaks to that, the part in here that most people don't pick up on is, I say, they begin to ask you questions and they no longer understand your answers. They try to reason with you, but you seem illogical and incoherent because they haven't grown.
Mm,
You
yeah.
don't really know where you're going yet, but you're trying to do the best you can. So you can't explain it to them, and they can't follow you, and so that's why they're trying to. They use things like you're not many people make it, right? They'll say that. So don't feel bad if you don't make it. Not many people do make it. So it's not really a direct like. They're not saying you'll fail, but they're saying go ahead and just put that away so you can stay here, right? And that's not a good place to be in. And blood is a hard way to have to, or like blood ties are supposed to be thicker than water, right? So to be able to, I guess, to cut off family ties is a hard thing to do. I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, I get
Because
that. And yeah, no, my bad. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say with my parents, they were never not supportive of what I did, but they never encouraged anything outside of sports, right?
Mhm.
So I was a really good athlete, but I actually tried out for the U.S. Junior Olympic team when I was 12. So my dad was always pushing me, keep playing sports, keep doing this, keep doing that, and then I quit doing that, and then he's like, well, he didn't really know what to tell me, because that was what he supported, and that's what he wanted me to do. So when I I've shared writing with him a little bit, and he just doesn't get it. It doesn't connect to him. So
Right, right. I was gonna say, before I lose my thought, yeah, I was gonna say what I got out of that was unfortunately sometimes what makes sense to you doesn't make sense to everybody else. And one thing I did that something I felt spoke to me what you were saying was, and again, I've learned this the hard way where it was like I realize now my job is not to convince you why I'm right. I'm just letting you know what's going on. You agree with me, great. You support me, great. If you don't, this has been real. Especially now again, like I'm gonna be 39. I'm in a point in my life where I'm not here to fight with you anymore because I used to be that guy that I want to try to save my relationship because but we've had 20 years of friendship. Why would we just throw it away like that? Why? Like this is what we want to throw away because of a disagreement. But I realize, like, you know what? Sometimes we have to just let them go because I feel like some things have to separate and then sometimes if they separate and then to come back, then that's just what it is. But if it's not meant to come back, it's not gonna come back. That's the reality of it. At least in my life, that's how it spoke to me. I'm gonna read some of the comments here. Whisper Poet, hello, hello. She said, family are the people you would never have spoken to. I'm sorry, would never have spoken to you otherwise, except the fact that you happen to be related. The sports world is a whole different monster. Writing is more complex. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. What do you think?
yeah, on that. So I agree with Whisper Poet 100%. But on the comment about sports, it's easily measurable, right? You either succeed or you fail, right? My baseball coach used to always say, if you succeed 30% of the time, you're a damn good baseball player, right? Because it's hard to bat 300. So if you can fail that often and still be good, that's a hard thing to do, but there is that measurement, right? You either did it or you didn't. With writing, there's no measuring stick. Like some people will hate it, some people will love it, and you just gotta hope more love it than hate it. And that's a hard thing to have to take the criticism for that. In sports, you're gonna get it, right? If your team wins and you play terrible, the team still won.
Okay.
If the team loses and you play great, they'll congratulate you for playing great, but it'll be like it's all the other, it's the rest of the team's fault. So they use different measuring sticks based on who you like. I guess who's in your corner, right? If you're the star player, they're always going to tell you that yeah, you did okay. The rest of the team we got to get them up to speed. But then when you play bad and the team loses, then it's all on you, right? So it's just I find when you don't have a measuring stick, it makes it hard. It's just like setting goals, right? You can say I want to be better, but what does better mean, right? I want to be a better writer this year. Well, how do I know that I'm better? Did I do anything? Did I accomplish anything? That's what's been difficult with this novel is having those like points where I'm checking in and saying, okay, I got this done, because it's not done until it's done, and it's been a long process, a lot longer than I thought it was going to take to get it out.
Yeah, no, I get that. And Whisper Poets, okay, I'm laughing because she says baseball has the best pants. That's funny. And then you have to set your own milepost and goals and disregard other people. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, with what Whisper Poet said. Yeah, I definitely agree with that because I think what it is too, when you allow the naysayers to kind of like throw things, oh, come on, that's not realistic. Oh, come on, you really have to do that? Like, it's like, I feel like sometimes people try to convince us to do otherwise, but we know in our hearts or in our spirits, okay, no, I know this is where I need to be. I feel it. But it's back to what you said. Sometimes people are just not going to agree. And it sucks that sometimes support is not there, right? Because I think for me too, I think there's like the word of validation, right? Like, hey, even if you don't like what I did, I mean, give me something. Give me something. You were the only one who can leave your journey. It stands to reason that you should be the only one to decide the value of it. Yeah, I'll live. Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. Definitely agree with that.
So yeah, I'm very big on experiences and taking advantage of those and living a full life. And I don't let people, fear was a hard thing for me to get over at first, but now I don't fear anything, right? I don't fear taking chances because I do it every day. That's what part of my job is to take chances. We roll the dice every day with money, and fortunately it works out for the better. But the first couple of times I was about to launch these campaigns with a lot of money, I was like, damn, I don't know if I'm going to do this right. And I was, it was hard to push the button, but now I just like second nature to me. So the thing I learned was you got to fail fast, right? So get out there, try it. If it doesn't work or there's not a market for it, you'll find out really early on, and then you won't spend all your time. You won't waste like 3 months developing something that nobody wants, right? So I'm
Wow.
really big on fail often and fail quickly, but you can't let failure be the outcome of your process.
Holy shit. Yeah, amen to that. And you mentioned fear. I wanted to ask you about fear because you said that you were fearful of taking chances. Now it's just second nature to you. Now it's nothing now. Can you describe to me how that fear, how did that look like for you? How did that feel like for you? And how were you able to overcome it? Like, what was the breaking point that made you say, you know what, I don't want to feel like this anymore? Like that, how does that all look like for you?
So the way I got into running my own business was I was at a plant, I was the controller, and I was the logistics director at the same time. So that was like 80 hours every week, and I was just like, this is what I don't want to do, because the only time I'd go home, I'd get home, I'd have dinner with my daughter, and then she'd have to go to bed, and then it was like it was the end of the day, right? But it wasn't the end of the day for me because I had to go back into my office at my house and work. So that was when I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm just not going to do this, but I don't know what I'm going to do. So they offered me a 2-year extension, and I turned it around. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do this anymore. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have like anything set up. So that was the first like step. But I had a lot of money saved up. I knew I could do different things and try. I had some time, right? Then I would try to perfect things before I'd release them, and then I'd have that realization like this isn't what the market wants right now. So I wasted 3 months and didn't produce anything. So that's when I adopted this theory of fail fast and fail quickly. I found things that people did want, and I got those out there. That helped. But when the pandemic hit, so right before the pandemic hit, I was helping startups raise capital, and there was a lot of good money in that, right? Because you're helping them get funding for, a couple million, 10, 15, $20 million. You set them up with a private equity deal and all this stuff, and then I would actually be requested to stay on to help them, with the operations at the beginning, because I was the one that knew all the numbers. So that all stopped like at the drop of a hat because the pandemic hit.
Wow.
So I was like 60% of my business was gone.
Wow.
So I started up with a few things that I was able to get off the ground, and then that's when I really built my marketing engine up, and that's why what I do now. But it came down to the point where I had to sell or eat, and if I wasn't going to sell, I wasn't going to eat. So I got out there and I sold some stuff, and that's when I like, okay, I can do this. Like I had to do it, so I did it.
So, all right, because I know you were talking about like, like running the business and stuff like that. For someone, like, I guess what I want to ask is like, what advice can you give someone that wants to start their own business, right? Because I was always under I don't want to say impression, I was always under the thought, I guess, I always had the thought that the grass sometimes is not greener on the other side, but it's not about how green the grass is, rather it's how much you water the grass or in order for it to be green. I mean, would you agree with that?
So yeah, man, you gotta pick your battles, right? You gotta decide what you want to do. And the biggest thing is, there's a book I read called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and it's not just about getting money. It's about how do you manifest anything you want, right? And the whole first chapter, he talks about belief. What do you believe? What is the thing that that you will do, like, no matter what, right? What is that thing? And if you go there and you start there, you'll have something that you're passionate about, right? So that's the starting point, is to find out what you believe. Then you have to start putting it, like Whisper Poet says, business plans and all that stuff. I used to do that all the time. But the thing that was always missing from a lot of these companies was, like, how do I execute that? All right. We can have a piece of paper that says you're going to do this, but until the guy goes out there and actually sells it, it's not a real thing.
Mm.
So I'd always take their projections, I'd chop them in half, and then I'd chop them in half again. And they're like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, this is what's really going to happen. So we got to run it this way. Right.
Mm.
And
Okay.
then we could build something, we'd start there and then we'd rebuild it. Right. Because I had to make them understand that if you don't go out and sell and you don't do these things, you won't get anywhere. So that's the biggest thing, is like, there's market testing, there's all these things you have to do, and you want to do that, and it's very important, because I worked with another company who didn't do any market research, right? They went out, they sold all these laser tag guns, and they had some other kids products. Sold them at a killing the first year because nobody else was in the market. After that, the market got flooded. They couldn't sell, like, they didn't even sell half of them, right? They bought them all on credit, and then they couldn't sell half of them, so they were screwed. And then that guy actually asked me to come on to be his CFO, and I had to resign the same day once I saw the books, because I was like, there's something not right about these books. So
Mm.
I was only a CFO of that company for about 3 hours.
Oh, damn. Wow.
No, because as soon as I opened up the books, I was like, no, I'm not dealing with this. This is ridiculous. Like, what's going on here? So
Right. So you pretty much had like discernment pretty much and be like, maybe I shouldn't, kind of thing. So in a way, you kind of made a conscious decision, because then it's like you saved yourself whatever headaches you probably would have had been dealing with later, in a way.
I still got interviewed by the three letter government agencies. I'll say that.
Okay. No, no, I understand that. No, no doubt, no
But
doubt.
there, I was not a suspect at that point. I was just being asked what I knew. And so
Right.
different.
No, I get that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if I would have stayed there and helped them with any of that, it would have been trouble for me. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't
No,
do that to
I get
them.
that.
So, I mean, I wouldn't do it anyway, but I didn't want my daughter to have to grow up without being around. So definitely wasn't worth the risk. That I mean, because at that time I could have used the money because I was at the front end of the pandemic, right? So it was really tempting to think about it, but I was just like, no, that's not who I am, and that's not what I want to be. So
Right, right. No, amen to that, man. Because what it all comes down to is you have morals. That's what it is. We have morals, and we believe in those things, and we would not want to compromise our morals. And sometimes it's so easy to get caught in that. That's very easy to get caught up in that. The fact that you decided, no, this is not who I am. Again, I have so much respect for you because it's like it is true. Like a lot of the, especially when you see a lot of money or whatever the case is, sometimes they say money speaks, right? And it's sometimes, and that's something I've learned too at my job. Well, I never really spoke about. You already know what you and I talked about private already, but just where I was working at before, you know, we want to be successful, but sometimes when we see money or we see what it could give us, it's kind of like we forget where we came from. We forget our morals, and I don't mean forget as in we don't remember. Forget as in we just stopped caring. And you could have did that, but you didn't. You decided, no, I'm not like this. I want to be a good role model for my daughter, and that's what you did. And again, so much respect for anyone that could do that. 'Cause that's not easy. Let's be honest, especially for something like that.
uh,
But
I was gonna
yeah,
get paid well, so I was like, damn, let's take care of all these problems that I'm dealing with, right? But I just I couldn't do it.
no, I get you. I get you. So we are almost towards the end of the live, and I do. Well, I have to. Oh, I always ask one question, but I had a live with another poet by name of Ragnar, and now that kind of inspired me to ask the second question. But I'm gonna ask the first question first. I always ask this. So when it comes to word trafficker comes to you, when they hear your name, we're not here anymore. What would you like to be remembered for? Like when they hear your name, when they speak about you, we're not here anymore. What's something you want to be remembered for? What impact? And what would you like that to be?
So the book is a lead into another project that I'm working on, and the other project is around social justice and things like that. So that's what I want it to be. And so after the first book is released, you'll get this little bit of some Easter eggs in the book for people to want to go back and look for them. But you probably won't even realize they're there until you know what the other project is. So
Okay.
um, and I'm probably going to release that after the first book, even though it's a 3-book series. I'll probably still go ahead and release it after, just because it needs to get out there and it needs to be in the world. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. But plans change over time. So, but
No,
that's the
no,
thing. I think they
yeah.
can make a difference in the world and cause something to be basically bring us from here to here, right? So we get a little bit closer. And I know you can't see me because you told me at the beginning, but we'll move us a little bit closer to the center, right? And then once we're there, maybe we can open up our minds and open up our ears, and you know, things will start to improve.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. And with everything you've been through in your life, if you could have a moment with your younger self, whatever age you feel like maybe you had your darkest times, if you can go back in time and talk to your younger self, what would that be for you?
So the moment, or what would I tell myself?
Yeah, like your younger self. So let's say I'll give you an example. Let's say your 10-year-old self. Like what would you like if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self at whatever age you pick, what would that be? Like what would that look like for you?
So I'm doing this with my daughter now, and I wish somebody would have done it with me. Was I'm taking her through the book, Think and Grow Rich, to show her how to start up her dog business. Right? She wants to walk dogs this summer, and that's what she wants to do. And you know, when I had an idea like that, my parents didn't have any way to tell me how to do it because they had never. My
Mm,
mom was a teacher, and my dad worked in an oil field, and that's all they knew, right? So, my dad went back to school eventually, but when he went back to school, he was an X-ray tech, so he didn't, get any business experience. So I'm just working with her, like, how do you put a plan together to get what you want? That's the whole point of this project. I didn't tell her she had to start a business. That's just what she chose to do. Because that's
Mm.
what, I'm always talking about, control your own future, right? That's what I talked to her about. So I'm taking her through this book to teach her the way she can get the things that she wants. And I wish somebody would have done that with me when I was, 10 or 12 or whatever. So
Mm. No, and that makes sense. That makes sense what you said because I really feel like, because my son is 5, right? So I will say this. I know for me, because I went to Pennsylvania recently and I got myself out of my comfort zone. I say, you know what, I'm gonna go to this poetry reading. I was featured at this poetry event and I finally went up and started reading poetry. It felt good. It was nerve-wracking. It's my first time doing it. But if it's one thing that did for me was telling myself, you know what, just do it, right? You don't know until it's done, right? Because I was talking to my cousin a while back and I said, well, I didn't have this growing up, or even when I was in my 20s, late or mid 20s. If this existed, I didn't know it existed. I grew up around an environment where I was told that whatever I wanted to do was not realistic. I've had my own family tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, and this is what you're supposed to do, and that's it. And I did some of those things, and it didn't work. And then who am I blaming? Is it my fault because I have poor decision making, or is it your fault for making me believe that this is what I'm supposed to do and I can accomplish it because now I can't live up to your expectations, right? So there's all these things. But I like to think for my son, I can be the exact opposite of my parents, right? And no matter what happens, like, even if I don't agree with why he's doing these decisions, but I would never make him feel that his mistakes are wrong. Because let's be honest, we're all going to make mistakes no matter what. And I think that's what we want for our lives too. But yeah, and I think that's awesome that you want to push your daughter to a direction that you think, no matter what happens, she knows she's gonna have her father's support. And I think that's important to leave behind, because let's be honest, we're living in a time where a lot of these kids don't even have their parents, which is pretty sad, you know? So
I wanted my daughter to not have her father there. So one thing that I did, part of the reason I wanted to start my own business was so I could go to every event she has. And I've been to every event she has. There's been 2 times I've been out of town. But I still watched her, I had her mom, do the FaceTime so I could watch the game. And I was, there watching the game those 2 times I wasn't there.
right, right,
We went to this event for, like, I think she was maybe 3 or 4 years old, right? There was a kid who's he's over in the corner just bawling his eyes out because his parents didn't show up, and I was like, that will never be my kid, right? And so, but now one of the things I used to ask her when I pick her up from school is, what'd you do today? Who did you help? And what didn't work that you tried?
wow,
Because that's the 3 things, right? Did you help somebody, and did you try something? And not, I didn't want to use the word fail at that point because I didn't want her to hear that at such a young age, repeated. But that's basically what I was asking her is what didn't work, and then let's talk about that and let's figure out how we can make it work next time.
mm,
So when I pick her up
amen.
at school, those were my 3 questions that I'd ask her every day.
Wow, wow, amen to that. And I was gonna say this, because I say this to everybody that I interact with, whenever like we have these interviews, I'm also learning from you too, right? Because now I feel like you inspired me to do the same thing for my son. He's speech delayed right now, but I have hope that he's gonna get through that, and now that inspires me to want to do the same. Hey, what did you help? What worked and all that? Like that kind of inspired me. So thank you for sharing that because now that inspires me to do more. You know what I'm saying? So thank you so much for that. I really
There's one other question you need to add on to that I didn't realize till later is what did you do for yourself?
wait, say that again. I'm sorry.
Oh, you need to also ask them what did they do for themselves, because it's not just about outbound. They need to take care of themselves too. And I didn't think about that question until later on.
Yeah. I mean, I
So
learn a lot from my own son as well about myself, which is interesting. I think that's what our kids should do. Like we learn from them, and it's like, because I think since I become a father, I've learned so much about myself that makes me want to be better.
yeah, my daughter's inspired me to do a lot of things that I did, and she's also opened my eyes up to things I wouldn't have seen otherwise because
Yeah.
she's very creative, and I'm doing this creative thing, but at the time I didn't know how to support a creative, so that was part of my learning was to go out and figure out how to support her and what she was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, amen to that. So brother, thank you so much for doing this live with me. Thank you for reaching out and well, I'll talk to you in the DM after this. But before we end, do you have any last words or anything you want to plug in before I end the live? Hey, World Player Muse. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in a long time. Hey, how are you? But yeah, any last words or anything
So one thing
you
I'll
want to plug in?
say is just kids have a way of saving us without even knowing what they're doing. And that
Amen.
was very true in my situation. So I'll read a piece if you don't mind
Yeah.
here to go out on. And this one's called Revolutionary Mind, which is kind of where the book's headed. Let me pull that one up. I think you'll like this one in particular. All right. Um, all right, here it is. So I just rewrote this one. So some of you may have heard it before. It's a little different now. This one's called Revolutionary Mind. The duality of words is an amazing thing. They can operate in the dark and the light, do work for greatness and evil, build empires while destroying people. Mixed meanings and metaphors. The only certainty is people will not walk away with the same thing. Now let's gather around the fire and let the battle of words begin. Fire deals in duality. It creates and it destroys. It heats and it consumes. It warns and it summons. Fire changes everything it touches. Fires are started by sparks, and in this story, the sparks are ideas. Brilliant sparks coming into existence for a moment, reaching out for hope that this is their moment, but they die away. But the sparks keep flashing and dying, flashing and dying, flashing and dying. Then one catches on to the kindling of hope and it burns powerfully bright and fast. Powerful and bright flames don't have a long lifespan, so they burn out. Well, sometimes they hold on just long enough for a catalyst to arrive. When the catalyst arrives to any flame, the fire begins to rage and blaze and it becomes magnetic. As fires have always been the natural gathering places for meetings of the hearts and minds. The ideas that give hope and stir emotions rather than feelings are like this. These things build movements that are authentic, and if delivered into the mind, floating on sincerity and compassion, they can spread messages across the world. When they're born from the minds of treasonous poets, these soul-shifting soliloquies and sonnets are manifested through spoken words, songs, and stories. Sparks searching for the souls of the selfless. As those sparks find them, free minds are brought together and their inner lights connect. As the illumination occurs, a new way forward emerges and solutions can be seen. Revolutions born on the purity of an idea that have a purpose and offer solutions are not dangerous and pointless. These are the fires that shape the foundations. These are the fires worth the sacrifice. These are the fires worth protecting. These are the fires of the martyrs. These are the fires that change the world. So, how do you change the world? You set it on fucking fire. That's what's on my revolutionary mind.
Wow. Wow. Amen to that. I don't disagree. That's the thing. Yeah, you want to change the world, just set the shit on fire, man. Um,
You gotta have an
yeah, and I think
idea
that's what it
that'll
is.
connect, right? And that will catch on to that flame. And if you have that, that's where this all starts, is with an idea.
Yeah. Because I look at fire as not always to destroy, but to change, right? Because maybe the purpose was to destroy something, but what it was is the fire helped us to embrace something that we never had. Now, metaphorically, yeah, like I look at it as all there was a fire within me that I didn't know I had, and all of a sudden, like, you know, this situation, what was meant to destroy me, built me, made me better. It tried to decimate me, it tried to paralyze me, but I was able to overcome. And now there's this fire inside me that wants more. And now, how can I share this light, right? Because I look about it as light. So how can I share this fire and be a light to those who are in the darkness, right? That's the way that piece spoke to me, and I love that because I think it's like you said. Sometimes setting the world on fire is not meant to destroy the world, but to change the world. That's the way that spoke to me.
Right. I mean, that's the genesis of it is, or the nexus of it, whichever one you choose. But it's the point that fire changes everything it touches. It will
Yeah.
change it fundamentally. It's not just a surface change; it's a fundamental change, and that's
Mm.
what you need to create real change. Is my favorite quote that I ever heard was I've got it on the board up here. Let me stand up so I can read it. It says, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you have to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete."
Mm. Wow.
Well, that's what I live by. Is like I don't. I work in a commodity field where there's a lot of people that can say they can do what I do, but I have something that nobody else has, and therefore I'm not a commodity.
Amen.
So I
Amen.
made all the people that are doing it the same way obsolete by what I created. So I think that's like the best quote ever, and that's how I live my life is based on that concept.
Oh, amen. Amen to that. Yeah. I don't really have much to say, but just to say thank you. To be honest with you, again, thank you so much for going live with me and having this conversation. I think the moral of the story is that no matter how many times we fall and looks like we're about to fail, we just have to keep going back up. And the getting up part is gonna be exhausting because you get beat up, you're like, oh my God, right? But we just have to keep going. And it's like, um, I'm gonna quote something that I don't know if you watch wrestling, but Paul Heyman said it best. They can't cancel you; you can only cancel yourself. Is what he said, and
Uh,
I agree with that. So yeah, yeah. That's all I gotta say about that. To be honest, so
no, I'd say
so
the
yeah,
other thing, just along those lines, is failure is part of the formula for success. Like you'll never get
amen,
there without failing. So be prepared for it. Just don't let it become the outcome of what you do. Just know, but it's gonna happen. Like there's almost inevitable that it's gonna happen at some point. But just you have to get back up, or then it becomes the outcome of your process, and that's what you can't let happen.
amen, amen to that. All right. So, Brandon, thank you so much for again doing this live with me. About to end this live right now, so thank you so much. Whether you're watching us or you're just joining us or you're watching the replay, definitely give this brother right here a follow. Like I said, he's a great father. He's a great poet. I mean, I like the stuff that he's written. I know for a fact you will enjoy his stuff as well. So definitely follow him. It's Word Trafficker with a K. I always say with the K. But yeah,
To change it up, make it a little different, so people didn't assume the other part of the word, right? So,
yeah. Oh God, yeah. No, I understand that. Yeah. No, I definitely get that. So thank you so much, man. I'll hit you up in the DMs. If you're just watching or watching the replay, thank you for joining us. Definitely give this brother a follow and check out his stuff. So have a good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us for Unraveled Sessions Live. So